Welcome to the Wendy De Rosa Sessions, a place to ground your energy, trust your intuition, and awaken the light within you. Hello and welcome to this episode, Embodying Your Power, the essential work of healing the lower chakras. I'm Wendy De Rosa. I'm so glad you're here for this conversation. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe so you'll know when I'm uploading new videos. And if you're watching or listening somewhere else in Apple, iTunes, or anywhere else, please leave a comment. You can like and subscribe. That just helps people find these episodes that may be beneficial for them. And today we're going to talk about the chakra system and very specifically the lower three chakras. I've been a chakra fan since my late teens, early 20s, as they have helped me understand more about myself in terms of the wounds that I'm here to heal and the power that I'm here to uncover and embody in this life. And I hope that in just this information, it helps you kind of have a similar understanding of yourself. It's interesting because the chakras, I'll give you a little chakra history, which is that they were first introduced in the Vedic scriptures very early on, somewhere around 700 and 500 BCE, and then mentioned later in the Upanishads. And these are sacred Hindu texts, Indian texts, and they were in Sanskrit. And in the Sanskrit word, chakras means wheel or lotus in the body. They are perceived. They are not actual, which means that they are part of our subtle body and we don't see them with our bare eyes. We actually see them through our intuitive sense of envisioning. So the clairvoyant sense of tuning in and perceiving or sensing or feeling, and they become present to us the more that we meditate on them and tune into them. I'll also add an interesting little tidbit here, which is that the chakras were not necessarily introduced with color. They actually were not initially depicted with color. They were just wheels of energy or vortexes of power or energy in the body. And there's been several introductions or mentions of color in the early 20th century. So there's a book called Serpent Power by Sir John Woodruff in 1919 that mentions the chakras. And then in 1927, there was another book introducing the rainbow color of the chakras a little bit later on, and that was by Charles W. Leadbeater, in 1927. But it wasn't until the 1970s when there was more of a metaphysical movement, when essentially we had a big migration of meditation and yoga from India to the US, that the chakras became more associated with color and then deeper attributes of the psychological components of the chakras, including how we engage socially or how we relate to ourselves on a personal level and on a power level with the chakras. So a lot of that came from more of Carl Jung's work, and then Carolyn Mace. And I know that there's been some other teachers along the way, and Adea Judith and others that have evolved the understanding of the chakras. They become quite a profound resource for us in understanding that some of the, we'll say, issues we carry in the tissues aren't always mental. They are, in fact, deeply rooted in our energetic anatomy, in our subtle body, and then therefore in our physical body. And so it can be very helpful for us to understand the chakra system. And what I would like to talk about is very specifically the value and importance of the lower three chakras in our personal growth and in our spiritual growth. In spiritual growth work, there's a lot of infinite emphasis on the mind and the expansion of the upper chakras. That means a higher realms, expanded awareness and expanded consciousness, the clairvoyant sense, remote viewing, connection to spirit guides and angels, life on the other side. And, even simply the concepts of love and compassion and kindness and generosity, which are aspects of the heart chakra. These are very relatable themes within spiritual growth, because spiritual growth is about the upper chakras. It's the more we are open in the heart and in the throat and the third eye and the crown, the more we have expanded awareness of spirituality. But from my experience, a lot of years, 3 decades now in this work, unless we ground that spiritual understanding into our humanity, sometimes what can develop within us is a split between our upper body, our upper chakras, and our lower chakras. We can be high functioning in our upper chakras, highly developed in our upper chakras. We can be highly rational, great thinkers and reason, and a lot about the executive systems functioning of the brain can really be dominant in the upper body. And yet on a conditional level in society, how we're raised, we're not necessarily nurtured in how to be in our lower chakras. And in fact, we've gotten a lot of teachings over the years and over the millenniums that we actually need to, cut off from the lower power centers. And those first 3 chakras are vital for our grounding, for our ability to embody our power. And interestingly enough, they have a lot to do with the collective and the what happens on when we have big shifts collectively. So when we go through eras of time where there are changes happening in time and in generations and in eras, they also somewhat shake up the paradigm in our lower chakras. And so as we're trying to kind of understand how to exist in ourselves in relation to the world around us, we're also trying to figure out how to be in relationship with ourselves in our body and in the history and the belief systems that we hold in our chakra system and in our body that have impact in how we're going to feel grounded and safe and have a sense of belonging in the world we live in. Okay, so let's hone in to the lower chakras now. And to do so, I'm going to invite you to take a deep inhale. And on an exhale, you're going to guide your awareness all the way down to your tailbone. It's not an area of the body we think about, and certainly not an area of the body that we think about as related to our subconscious. We think about that in the mind sometimes, but this power center located at the tailbone is your first chakra, and it relates to the conditioning that you have absorbed and lived within and internalized between the years of 0 to about 7 years old, roughly. So we'll say 0 means in utero. It also means intergenerational. It also means that whatever our soul might have brought into this human experience is imprinted within our root chakra consciousness. And what I'm addressing kind of holistically through this look at the lower 3 chakras is the transformational journey that we are on collectively, meaning times are changing and we are going through evolution. And as a result, our internal energy systems are responding and perhaps even transforming. And we're having responses inside ourselves according to what's going on collectively. Another way to think about it is the systems are changing, and so our system is changing internally. This power center, its powers relate to safety and belonging and grounding and security and abundance And our ability to feel our physical body, it has to do with the bones and the structure of our body and the systems within the body, all the systems, because it has to do with everything that connects us to the material world. Our physical body is material. We can feel it. Also, our home, how we live in our physical dwelling space is part of our material existence. Existence also relates to our family, the communities that we have been raised within, those who have raised us. And it also has to do with how we belong within those systems that we've been raised in. One of the I'll say the imbalances or the shadow elements that are held here is our deep primal fears. Not just our fears, but the fears that were in what I like to call the root chakra marinade. And that means everything we were raised in and we learned through absorption between the years of 0 to 7 years old. So if we were raised in environments where fear was in the field, so to speak, we will internalize that within our own young self, our own soma, our body, and we will develop our own belief systems and our own coping mechanisms and our ways of operating in the world accordingly to what we were, again, marinating in or absorbing at the time. On an aside, I also teach intuition. You may know that already through my podcast. And I run a training program on developing intuition, which includes a deep dive into all of the chakra work and so much more. But one aspect of developing intuition, people ask, is everybody intuitive? And what I often will say is we are all from 0 to 7 years old empathically intuitive. And what that means is that we all learn through absorption. We all learn through the sensory and clairsentient aspect of intuition, which is the felt sense. So we're all absorbing to be able to bond and belong and attach to the people who are raising us, and then branching out from there to the systems that are raising the family system. That may mean the school systems, that might mean cultural systems, religious systems, that might mean the systems of our town, our country, our government, etc. All the systems are part of the root chakra. And what happens here, and this is why it's so important that we are connecting into the root chakra and grounding through it. And I mean grounding into our root chakra and into ourself as the world is changing, because when systems are changing, when there are systemic changes in the world around us, which we are experiencing at this time, the systems are changing. Our political systems are changing. Our economic systems are changing. Our healthcare systems are changing. So much change is happening that ends up, we'll say, I like to refer to it as we wake up and we shake up inside our body. It starts to challenge our ability to feel safe and bonded and connected and have a sense of belonging. It's one of the reasons why change is so hard for us, for many people, is that we've been bonded and have a sense of belonging in the systems that we're raised in. And then something changes in the system, and we've got to find new ways of feeling safe and bonded and belonging in that system. Here's the other part to mention of why root chakra work is so important for us, is that it has to do with cultures. And that means the cultures that we are raised in, and it means the cultures we coexist within. And whenever our cultural system, our historical cultural systems are in our own upbringing, is they are going to be challenged when we're faced with, again, systemic changes that might affect our ability to feel culture or feel safe within culture. So what do we relate that to? It's in the isms. racism, sexism, ageism, ableism, and so on. The isms are aspects of our root chakra because they have to do with the systems that we learned how to bond and belong within our world, within our community, and within our cultures. So this becomes an area of the body where when we're faced with systemic changes or systemic belief systems that might bump up against our own, we might be bumping up against our own fears within the systems that we're raised in. And from a healing perspective, what this means is that we are having to look at our ingrained subconscious and absorbent belief systems, including our isms. We have to look at our isms because our isms are part of the belief systems, the protection mechanisms, and the biases we carry that help us feel, again, safe and connected and have a sense of belonging in the world. But here's what's tricky about the root chakra. The root chakra is based on the systems we marinated in. And for a spiritually progressing soul in a human body and in a human experience, we have the ability to choose. Yes, we can say, I grew up with this conditioning, but a spiritually progressing soul has the ability to say, but my true self doesn't believe that anymore. My true self doesn't want to operate on subconscious fears, fear of other, fear of belonging, fear of feeling safe, fear of feeling bonded and connected, fear of lack or that there is lack. We choose on a spiritually progressing soul level, meaning our soul decides at some point in our adult life what is truly true for us versus what we were told was our truth. When we're 0 to 7 years old, we have absorbed a great deal of subconscious history that goes back through our parents' generations, through grandparents, through the cultural systems they were raised in, and through the fears that they absorbed. That gets transferred to us, and we develop our sense of belonging in those systems. But to belong in an evolving consciousness, we have to be willing to look at what we subconsciously hold, what was not necessarily, I'll say, chosen, meaning we absorbed it because we had to, and where our moral standing is at this stage of our life. That is root chakra evaluation and growth. And when I say truth, this is what I mean. Truth in the energetic anatomy is the central channel of our body. And that pillar in the center of our body is our soul's consciousness commingling with divine consciousness. It's another way of saying the divine is within us. It commingles with our soul. Our soul is it. We are one within this central channel of our body. But the way that we have learned, I said this previously, we tend to live a little higher in the body sometimes, and we're operating sometimes from a fragmentation from the lower half or split. But root chakra truth means that the pillar comes all the way down to the root chakra, and we find a center point of deep spiritual truth in the root. And really, what that begins with is I am here. That's the truth. I am here in my body. And this is my home in the root chakra of my body. Despite all the beliefs and preachings and teachings and experiences and traumas that I have coexisted with in the root chakra of my body that is taken over and transferred through the other systems of my body, including my brain, the neurotransmitters, I have the ability now to root down inside myself and come down to my first fundamental truth, which is I am present inside my root chakra. And I will tell you, through my years of training and helping people in grounding, sometimes coming down into the root chakra and reclaiming that power center isn't pretty. It's fatiguing. Sometimes people will say, I can't even feel that, what you're talking about, Wendy. I hear you. I can kind of get it, but I cannot feel it. Or sometimes there is like a deflection, like there's an emotional reaction or a deflection or a disassociation or disconnection. We have a great deal of energy to process in that root chakra just to be able to come home to it authentically and in our deep sense of truth. That in itself is a process. I wish I could cover the unfolding of all the healing that would need to happen in the root chakra in one podcast. It's not possible. It's a journey. I do that journey through my energy healing and intuition training. And quite frankly, the first part of it is solely on the first three chakras. And some students will say, I have to sit here for 6 months and work through this deep work because it's that potent and important and powerful. Now we help students through it, but it is a very protected area of our body based on the vulnerability of our young experiences and the fact that we are not necessarily right as humans, and we're not necessarily perfect, and we are messy, and we are human. So we have to embrace our humanity to be able to be willing to say, okay, I'll go there. I'll go to the root chakra of my body and start to unpack what wasn't mine to begin with sometimes, and then what I've been holding all this time that isn't really serving me. Very, very powerful and potent work. But what it is this truth coming down to the root chakra is a homecoming, and it's a way of instilling a primary sense of safety and trust in the body. Power is trust. The power is safety and security. For us to feel safe and secure in the world, we have to feel safe and secure in the root chakra. And that's coming home to an embodied sense of self. So deep healing work is important in this area. But even as I'm saying this, perhaps you could imagine what it feels like to take a deep seat in this power center of your body and come home there and acknowledge not everything I'm carrying was mine to begin with. And I needed it. It was important. It helped me belong in the systems that I was raised in. But I've grown and the systems are changing around me, and I can come home to this area of my body and claim what is true for me now in the base of the body. But I'll tell you, our lofty truths won't get there. We've got to come down into it and really sit with it for a period of time to really let this part of our body tell us what pillar coming down to the root chakra truth really is. So we've got to spend some time there, breathing into it and slowing down. So you can take time with that. And please just know everything I'm saying, I have deeper processes and journeys around it through my training program. So just know that. So I want to move on to the second chakra, because once again, I can talk forever and we can be here for days and weeks on the chakras. And I'm just speaking to portions of them, not all of the whole holistic aspects. There's so much to say about them. So I'm going to move on to the second chakra. And here's what I'll share with you about it is that this power center, which sits in the pelvic bowl, and it relates to the sacrum bone in the back of the body, but it also sits in front of it. So it's somewhat in the pelvic bowl. It's a power center for our sexuality, our creativity, our ability to sense underneath the table. It's our sensory experience. It relates to our feelings and our emotions. It relates to our ability to feel our emotional self, to feel what we need, our emotional needs, and our ability to be in our, I'll say, our feminine power. And when I say feminine power, I mean it's not gender. All genders have a masculine, feminine quality of energy. That might even be too, you know, too dualistic. There may be too binary. There may be more aspects of the energy, but just for the sake of giving this understanding of second chakra, I'll speak to it this way. When we talk about the feminine power, we're talking about vulnerability and intuition and sensitivity and being real and authentic with how we feel. Those are just some qualities. Empathy would be one of them. And those qualities, again, don't pertain to gender. They pertain to the aspect of the feminine. I know in business, they're called soft skills to have, but they are very much a power in this area of the body. Now, this power center is in itself probably the most delicate flower in the body, which means its power comes from tuning in to it and actually softening into the subtle and being able to sense and feel. I've worked with clients who have said, I can't feel. Like when you say feel, what do you even mean to feel in my body? I can think about how I'm feeling. I can't really feel it. It's an indication to me that the second chakra most likely either has been to some degree frozen or is not entirely connected to that area, because in order to feel, we have to be able to implement the softening, the relaxing, the decrescendo, the ability to really come into a soft, sweet, subtle aspect in ourselves. It is the power that can feel beneath the surface. So for example, I wrote a book called Becoming an Empowered Empath. The second chakra is the empathic power center. It's like to an empath feels under the table. So if you say, I'm okay to an empath and they get the gut feeling that, wait a second, this person's not okay. That's an empathic sense. I hear you. I get what you're saying, but I feel something different. And that's our intuition. That's our empathic intuition. So this power center really requires us to be very in tune with our sensitivity, our ability to sense, and to be able to have an emotional spectrum, like meaning from rage all the way up to elation. And to understand that part of being human is to have this emotional spectrum, and that it's about not disconnecting from those emotions, stuffing them, deflecting, rejecting, projecting, or disassociating from them, but it's about building skills around them and developing emotional resilience. That is the second chakra power in this area. Why is this so important in the times that we're in these evolutionary times? Part of it is a couple of things. Number one, historically, we have been second chakra wounded throughout time. I mean, we could go back all the way to where the feminine was suppressed hundreds and hundreds of years ago in the church, in our religious systems, our cultural systems, our political systems. We could go through various Western cultures. We could go through some Eastern cultures. We can go through the way in which the feminine was treated. And we'll also say that again is not always gender, although it certainly can be represented as gender. We know, for example, the patriarchy was dominant over the feminine. We know all the ways that women were suppressed or, had less rights. We can look at all of that historically. We can also say that we'll say, for example, a male body, someone who's a male gender, might feel some shame for their own feminine qualities of sensuality, creativity, vulnerability, sensitivity, being real with how they feel, and being able to have emotions. Why? Because the feminine qualities were shamed. So what's happening here is that we're battling within ourselves, and maybe battling is a strong word, but we're negotiating within ourselves the historical projection of the feminine and the way the feminine was valued. And oftentimes that is suppressed inside us, inside the second chakra. There's a vulnerability, there's a weakness to the second chakra quality because it's been underdeveloped, undernourished. And what we're also been experiencing, coinciding with this kind of historical imprint I'm talking about, where it's coinciding with the rise of the feminine qualities, that the sensuality, the ability to be vulnerable and have empathy and connect to our emotions, all the teachings around the importance of processing our emotions, Brene Brown's work. I mean, there's so much that is about developing more emotional resilience and empathy and qualities that are actually bringing connection between ourselves and other people. When we are able to have our feelings and to soften inside ourselves, we actually become trustworthy human beings. People trust us. They feel safe with us when we meet our own softness, when we meet our own sense of connection inside ourselves and our emotions. But here's the thing. To be able to soften into the second chakra region, we also have to feel the hard feelings. We have to be able to process our emotional history, our rage, our anger, our stress, our grief, our guilt, and our shame. I did a podcast episode, which you can go back and watch, on the shame blanket. And I talk about how sometimes to even get to the emotions, we have to go through the shame blanket. And the shame blanket represents the experience of being shamed, meaning we've been culturally shamed, gender shamed. I mean, just every, feminine, whatever, just being able to have emotions, we've been shamed. So if we have been shamed, then that shame sits on top of our second chakra. And what's underneath is the true feelings. And so sometimes we have to go through the shame of even having a feeling to be able to have the feeling. And so that process of being able to feel the feelings is incredibly important in our development and in our healing of our second chakra. We have to process the feeling of being oppressed back through time. We have to process the feeling of being invalidated, the fact that perhaps other people's needs have been more important than ours. Maybe we've had to process the feelings around being the peacekeeper or being the one who takes care of everybody's needs, being caught in codependent dynamics that meant having to give yourself up in some way because that's what was taught to you. So here as an adult, I'm stuck in codependency. It's not always the choice, right? It's because sometimes it was modeled for us to disconnect from our truth in this area of the body. So the second chakra becomes an area of the body where it becomes vital for us to be able to process all the emotions about what our early childhood experiences were, what our young experiences were. And sometimes maybe not even just our young, sometimes it has to do with our relational dynamics, the ways in which we might be still holding on to feelings that are about the different relationships in our body. Okay, again, I'm going to come back to why is this important? It's important because when we can't feel our feelings and really own vulnerability and emotional resilience and being able to own our feelings and have them in a responsible, ethical, and honestly human way, what we do is we shame, we deflect, we project, we hurt, we shut down, we disconnect, we make the other person wrong, and we create divides. What are we experiencing in this world today? We are experiencing the outcome of people having a really hard time feeling their feelings and being vulnerable and dropped in to the deeper senses of truth and sensitivity, empathy and connection. And we're hearing a lot of spiritual ideology, teachings, etc., that don't necessarily include the powers of the second chakra. Second chakra in its form, in its true essence form, is that embodied sense of being connected to our divine power of the feminine in this area. But we have to embrace it. We live in a world that has learned, we've grown up. Many of these generations, many of our generations have grown up in a patriarchal system that has invalidated the feminine. And so what does that do? It does everything: control, it does power moves, it does everything and anything it can to avoid feeling the feelings and being vulnerable and being trustworthy and being connected. And we are seeing it everywhere in our leadership. It is so important that we, as we are connecting to our own inner authority, our own inner leader, and the light that leads us, that we are engaging in these lower power centers in a way that we find our center, we find our truth and our seat in these areas of the body. It may mean we have to heal and process our history, our wounds, and how we got hurt. And that's okay. That's good. Meaning, what I mean by that is that there's no shame in that. There's no shame in being human and having a wound and a trauma that we've carried. So every human being has some version of it. But being able to really embody our light and our truth and our deeper sense of embodiment is going to come from being able to allow ourselves to have the feelings we're having. If you are interested, I wrote a blog post. You can go to my website, wendyderosa.com, and then go to the blog under the About section. And there's a blog post there on just this. I shared about my anger and how I processed my anger and how we live in culture, in a society that never taught us how to have anger. And so what happens when people get angry? Rage and violence. And so we have violence in our system now. It is not just in the collective system, but it's affecting our collective psyche and our personal psyche. There's violence in the field, and that is the energy of anger and the inability to be able to feel it and process it and be connected to it. It's so important that we know how to process anger, and so that we can be in our second chakra in a way that feels grounded. Sometimes if we were to drop into our second chakra, we'd feel angry because there's anger there, because hurt happened. And that's important that we feel it and process it. Okay. Again, I could go on and on down the road here with second chakra. There's so much more to say about it. But what I would say for now, as we transition to third, is that this power center, once again, needs your love, your sensitivity, your sense of being rooted in your feminine power, your intuition, your ability to slow down, soften, smell the flowers, and feel the subtle. Feel what's beneath the surface. Feel into yourself, and ultimately that will help you feel where others are. That is the empathy that comes out of the power of this center. Okay, I'm going to move up to the third chakra, and we're only going as far as the third chakra in this episode, as we're talking about the importance of the first three chakras and healing them, particularly in these times. And just know that I always have tons more. So you can check out my my YouTube and my podcast episodes, my blogs. There's so much. You can join my membership. There's so many things that I have. So I'm going to move on to the third chakra. So the third chakra is located in the solar plexus region of your body, between the navel and the diaphragm. It governs the digestive system and many of your internal organs. It is the power center of your will, your sense of self, your identity, and your ability to have your own personal center, meaning power in your body, meaning you have a self here, and that you are able to have a self in a way that manifests your true self into the world. And it is needed to have a self. Ego gets a bad reputation, and this power center relates to our ego. It gets a bad reputation because ego gets equated with conditioning. The fear consciousness that we grew up in that might keep us separate from our soul. But we have two aspects of our ego. We have our healthy ego and we have our wounded ego. I talk about this in my free course. If you go to my website, wendyderosa.com, and sign up for the free course, I share more about this. But the healthy ego is your third chakra. It's your ability, it's your affect, it's your personality. It's the way that you show up in the world as having a true center, as having an I am in this area of your body. The wounded ego is the monkey mind, the victimizer, the inner critic. And that is comprised of all the conditioning that we were raised in. Yes, we need to heal the wounded ego, but we also need the healthy ego, backed by our soul and backed by spirit, to be able to manifest our true self into the world. We need that to be out there, to have a self in the world. This is our masculine power. Again, it's not gender, but it's proactive, productive, making things happen. It's action, it's our strength, it's our doing in the world. We need that in combination with the feminine, which is more introspective and intuitive and sensitive and tuning in. We need that aspect. We also need to be able to get things done and to make things happen. One of the reasons why this power center is so vital for our connection and for our clearing is because I want to say several things. There's several things about it. Number one, it governs the digestive system, which means not just digestion of food, but it's digestion of life. It is the power center that its job is to help us navigate our environment instinctually, to be able to instinctually determine how we're going to belong in that space, in that environment. So if I walk into a room and there's a funky vibe going into my room, in that room, and I walk in with a blaring open third chakra, I am most likely going to take in that energy into the room. I might get a headache. I might feel a little dizzy. I might all of a sudden, my gut hurts, my stomach starts to hurt, and I'm losing my faculties. I'm losing my ability to think clearly. My executive system's functioning of the brain isn't working. There's neurotransmitters between the gut and the brain. So that was energy. I engaged with energy. Well, let's add in anything in the world right now, any stress in the world, your work stress, your home life, your the news, the state of the world, your family system, whatever might be going on. If we are too open in this power center, we don't have the right filters to be able to manage the amount of intake, and we take that in as stress. Combine that with what might feel like an identity crisis internally. This power center relates to who I am. Who I am means that we have to have a self. If I was raised believing that my value and worth was going to depend on not having a self, because having a self is selfish. If I was told that's selfish, you want to go do that for yourself, that is selfish. You want to go on that trip, how selfish can you be? You want to think, if we got the training early on that having anything for self is selfish, then having a self is not going to feel comfortable. It might also mean I'm having a hard time with my identity, my deep sense of self and who I really am. To survive in the world, we develop a lot of identities. We create and uncreate identities throughout our life. You were a student at one point, you were a graduate at one point, you had this career in one point, maybe you were a nurse, or maybe you were a therapist, or maybe you're a business owner, and then maybe you're a parent, and then maybe you leave that job and you're not that identity anymore, and everything crashes with whatever came with that identity, and then you have to find yourself again in a new identity. We're constantly evolving in our identities. But what doesn't change is that we have a self. We might go through the process of becoming more who we are here to be, and that's part of the inner pillar. That's the spiritual journey in the center of our body. The transformation of our identities might be part of that journey of becoming more true in who we are, in our center and our self. But we have to have a self to be able to have boundaries. There needs to be something there, the light, the pillar. Again, this is one of the reasons why the pillar is so important as our center of truth, to come down all the way through the solar plexus, the second chakra, and the first, to be able to have a sense of center in this area, to have a self. Now, I want to add something. The chakras will compensate for a chakra being blocked or closed. If my second chakra, this is why I'm telling you this, is because it has to do with what we see in the world right now and why chakra healing is so important. If my second chakra were blocked or closed because it was undervalued, undernourished, not safe for me to be in my feminine power, for me to be sensitive, have emotions, creative, I was injured in this power center, and it weakened it in some way, closed it or blocked it. My third chakra most likely will blow open. Most likely. Now, it's possible it can close down too. Very possible. But most likely, some way the third chakra will compensate. And oftentimes, that third chakra, if it blows open, it is looking to control the surroundings, because being safe and soft and sweet isn't safe, isn't like being in the power of the second chakra is not a safe thing. So the third chakra will try to manage the environment. It will control, it will manipulate, it will find ways to get needs met and to feel a sense of belonging and connection. And we will ultimately lose our boundaries between self and other in the third chakra area of the body. Personal power will increase to a different level of power. Personal power is a good thing. That means I have a sense of self. I know where my boundaries begin and end. I know where you are, and I know where I am, and I can feel that, I am me. That helps. That's personal power in the third chakra. I know who I am, and I know my value and my worth, and I know where I begin and end. To lose that oftentimes means that everything that I have to control my external environment to be able to have a sense of self. That's not good power. That's power of manipulation. That's overpowering. That is another aspect of codependency sometimes. Like I need to be able to merge or control or be in connection with another person or thing to be able to have a sense of self. That's an aspect of codependency. It's also what we're seeing in the world right now. It's what we see when we are in systems that are trying to oppress certain people and certain populations and the world around us, just different aspects of our well-being, of a humanity. So when we start to have an overextended power here, power that goes beyond personal self and responsibility, an inflated ego, we'll say, that power, that oppressive power, that overpowering is absolutely an imbalance and what we might feel ricocheting through the collective. The important aspect, if we were even feeling that inside ourselves, let's just say you heard me say that, and you could probably pinpoint leadership in ways that leaders do that. Some leaders do that, not all. You might see that. But then you might go, oh, wait a second. I can see where it's so hard for me to be able to feel my true feeling and how I'm constantly meddling in my kids' stuff. Like I can't just let them be. Or I am so in my partner's, so attached and clingy, and I can't, it's hurting the relationship to the degree that I'm clinging, or maybe overpowering or controlling everything around me. And then you might find I'm getting burnt out because I'm doing that. That's another way it plays out. And so the healing here is that the healing here is actually to come back down into the second chakra. Because if we can expand the presence of the power underneath it, that third chakra will come back in. We have a way of saying, oh, let me soften into my feelings, and I'm feeling the tears come up, and my face is flushing with some feelings of guilt and shame. Let me just breathe through that for a moment and recognize, and man, is that hard to breathe through. That's hard to take responsibility for. But that is a power of the second chakra, is to take responsibility for it. The third chakra will start to come back in, and we'll start to recognize, oh, this is me. This is my sense of self. If I were to sit in this power center to feel what it feels like to have a self without fear and without the doctrine and dogma I received, and without, all the early childhood conditioning and shaming, like, I think I have to sit with my sense of self. I think I need to develop and be with and really listen to what that part of me is and who I'm really here to be and what my deeper why is and who I'm here to manifest and be in the world. It's not that other pattern I was doing. That came from an imbalance. I need to come and sit in the power of this power center and go a little deeper into the solar plexus area of the body, the third chakra. This is your fire, but if there is no water, that fire will burn out of control. So we need the water underneath it. That's the second chakra, to be able to counterbalance and balance the third chakra. On the flip side, this power center can go through lack of confidence. This is the confident power center. We can lose self-esteem and we can lose confidence and willpower. The healing around that is exactly the same. We have to find the pillar through the center of that solar plexus and to be able to sit with a sense of self and who I am and why I'm here and what I'm called to in this experience, in this body, in this life. So that is the healing around the third chakra to sit with. There's so much more to talk about with each of these power centers. I said a whole mouthful. What I'd like you to do right now, because I do like to offer a little guided healing for a moment, is just close your eyes and take some deep breaths into your sit bones and your tailbone. We'll let your grounding cord extend into the earth. And I recognize that in hearing all of this information, it might have stirred up some different feelings or awarenesses. And just know that next steps around that might mean, going deeper into your healing. I've shared with you ways you can do that with me. You might have your own therapies or your own systems also. I'll share more about that, but just acknowledging that for now, as the chakras have been named and their powers, that you are going to bring your pillar, the awareness of your pillar, all the way down to your tailbone with the words, I am here, in the root chakra of my body. And then bring your awareness here to your second chakra in your pelvis with the words, I am seated in my emotional center. It's safe for me to feel. And then bring your awareness to your solar plexus, third chakra region. And let the pillar also, as it comes through there, bring your awareness to your third chakra with the words, I am me. No one else in this life will do my life. Only I will. It's my choice. I am listening. And as you root down into these powers here in your lower body, you're going to let all the upper energy in your body start to even out. If it felt like you've been too high up in your head or too forward in your heart, that you lean back into a beautiful waterfall and let that waterfall wash through you, letting go of what doesn't need to linger, and rooting your soul in your seat in your body. So taking a deep seat inside yourself. And I just ask here, as this water flows, this waterfall of light flows, that you take it with you wherever you go. You take your grounding cord with you wherever you go. I pray that this episode has helped you feel more connected to your truth and the light that's leading you. I give thanks for this opportunity. I pray that we are all connected and connected to the true heart within you that's guiding you. And I give thanks for this opportunity. Thank you. So be it, and so it is. Thank you for tuning in. I hope this supports you in your life. Feel free to share it with anyone you feel might benefit from it. Again, if you ever want to go deeper, please go to my website, wendyderosa.com. I have my membership. I have my year-long training program. They're both deeper dives and so many other episodes. So thank you. We'll see you soon.